Welcome back. You're watching France 24. It's time now for Focus. Now, in France, as in elsewhere in Europe, the economic crisis is hitting many people hard. As unemployment continues to soar, poverty is getting worse. Aid groups claim 8 million French citizens are now living in what's called relative poverty. That's mean they live with an income far below the national average. Well, today the government outlined the details of its €2.5 billion pledge to try and help. Charlène Pell has this report.
Increasing numbers of French people are living in relative poverty. In 2010, there were 350,000 more than the year before. Then, a total of 8.6 million people were taking home less than €964 a month. That's 14.1% of the population, the highest poverty rate in France since 1997. Some of those were in extreme poverty. In 2010, 2.1 million people were trying to make ends meet with less than €642 a month. The worst affected are the young. Almost a quarter of 18 to 25-year-olds live under the poverty threshold.
Compared with last year, it's even harder to find anything. There are even fewer opportunities, even though now I'm in a better situation. It feels like when you have nothing, you're not given any opportunities.
These numbers are pushing the government to take action. As part of a 5-year plan, it intends to extend income support by up to 10%. The income ceiling to access health coverage will be raised, a measure that will allow 500,000 more poor people to be covered. 10% of public childcare places will be reserved for low-income families, and an extra 8,000 new beds for the homeless and asylum seekers will be available. In France, 3.6 million people live in poor housing conditions or are homeless, according to one charity.
We can't accept people continuing to die in the streets. More than 400 people died last year. We can't accept that people have no alternative but to live in 2 square meters or camp all year long. The fight against exclusion and housing issues must become a top priority, and I'm not sure that that's the case yet in our country.
But all these measures cost money. The government estimates it will have to find €2.5 billion over the next 5 years.
Well, tonight's Focus guest is Bruno Tardieu. He's the president of Aid Fourth World France. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Now, the French public debt is already 85% of GDP. Taxes have gone up substantially. Austerity is the order of the day for many people. Can France afford to embark on a €2.5 billion plan to help people out of poverty?
I don't think we can afford to let so many people out of work, to let so many people not contribute to the economy. So that's another way to see things, is that in time of crisis, if you start to throw people out, everybody is afraid. And France becomes totally stopped because everybody is afraid to take risks. So a sense of security is necessary for people to take risk. And also, when you invest 1 billion with people in extreme poverty, they don't keep it. They don't put it in the bank. They spend it right away. So it's money that's directly in the economy. It's money that is an investment in people and in the economy.
Now, there is a debate going on across Europe at the moment, and that is, you know, as we come into crisis, we're looking back at the European welfare state and how it has progressed over the last few decades. Some people would argue that you don't help people out of poverty by simply throwing money at them. It's more complicated than that. For a start, you need a robust economy and you need jobs. I mean, there seems to be no attempt at stimulating the economy. It's just throwing good money at people who can't help themselves for whatever reason.
Well, I don't agree with you. I think a lot of the efforts in this plan is with early childhood. And it's hard to say that a 3-year-old is already responsible for his poverty. So having early childhood education is one of the key points of this plan. And having kids having a better mastering of the language, of the mathematics, is good for the economy. There's a big part of this plan also is for young people, 100,000 contract for training. So that is what people need to get back into the economy. And plus a lot of effort on health. Many people don't find work because there's not enough work, but also because their health is terrible or their housing is terrible. So the basic security is what people need to be able to contribute to the economy.
But has the welfare system in Europe moved more, as it was designed to be a safety net for people who lost their job and to prevent them from being made homeless and to prevent their families from suffering. Now it seems to be a large proportion of the population has to take these benefits just to survive. And this is unsustainable, isn't it, for the economy?
Right. The welfare system in France is for all people, for when you lose your job, when you lose your health, and when you get, and for the families. That's the four parts. And many people in France benefit from that, not only the poor. And yes, we have to reform the welfare state. Yes, we have to make it a much more collective thing. The government has to support communities, not individuals nowadays. That's the big reform that's in front of us. But just saying that it's the poor people who benefit from the welfare state is not correct. Most families in France receive benefits for their kids. And that is also what has helped France to continue to have many young people, to continue to have many children. As in Italy, for example, there's hardly any kids who are born. And so I think the welfare state in France is wider than just helping the poor. It helps widely society when you are sick, when you are old, and nobody questioned that. But I do believe that we need a reform of the welfare state to enable people to help each other. Not that social workers would help every individual, but communities will learn how to help each other and not rely on the social workers.
But that's my point. If you've got everybody delving into the pot and taking welfare, if you've got parents who work and have their own earnings taking credits and benefits for their children, they're not going to the most needy. And then you have an issue like this when many people are in desperate straits, and they really need the money. And another point is the retirement age in France. It's much lower in France than it is elsewhere in Europe.
Yes.
If people were prepared to work 1 or maybe 2 years longer, then there would be more money for other pensioners, wouldn't there?
That's a very good point. And I think it's important that the government try to rope in the unions in the discussion and that they ask François Chirac to be in charge of following this plan. And if you notice in the agreement between the unions and the employers last week, they really agreed, for example, to enlarge the health insurance to wider size of population. So yes, sometimes France looks like some people don't have rights, they have privileges. And yes, we have to look at these privileges. But at the same time, solidarity in France is a big value. And I think for many years, this solidarity was only amongst people who have a work, and now it is widened. So all this is on the table, but I think the French government was courageous to change the way we look at the poorest people, not as people who are a burden on society, but people who have potential. So all the stigmatization that was so strong for the past 10 years has been reversed by this plan.
But isn't there a risk that you will make that stigmatization worse if you continue to tax people who are working, who aren't well off, but who are working and struggling themselves? If you keep telling them that they have to pay more and more money,
most people
is that not stigmatizing the poor even further?
No, most poor people are working. They have 2 hours here, 3 hours there. They hold an old person. They help cleaning a bank. Maybe they clean this TV studio at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody sees them. Most poor people are working today, and they pay taxes. When they buy their cigarette, they pay taxes like everybody else. So it's just a question of not thinking that we are two different kinds of people. Everybody wants to work. Everybody wants to earn their own living. And everybody agrees to contribute. But so I think this plan, by bringing together organizations like mine who fight against extreme poverty and unions, is trying to bridge the gap between those who have been helped before by the welfare state and those who have to be more helped now.
Bruno Tadier, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
That's it for Focus. Time for a short break. When we come back, all the latest international headlines. Don't go away. This is France 24.